Tombstone isn't just another Western. It's a film that clawed its way out of chaos, heat rewrites, and even near collapse to become a cult classic. Behind its grit, gun smoke, and unforgettable one-liners lies a story of survival, both on screen and off. Cast members pushed themselves to the breaking point. The director's chair was more complicated than anyone knew, and the line between myth and reality blurred in ways Hollywood rarely dares. Today, let's saddle up and dive into 20 weird, wild, and fascinating facts about Tombstone 1993, and stick around for the bonus fact at the end, because Doc Holliday's real-life last words were colder than anything written in the script. 1. Kurt Russell secretly steered the film. On paper, Tombstone had a director, George Cosmatos, but in reality, the film was on the verge of collapse. The script was changing daily. Actors were confused, and the tone shifted from scene to scene. That's when Kurt Russell, who played Wyatt Earp, quietly took control. Without ego, he reorganized the schedule, cut unnecessary scenes, and guided the cast through chaos. He never took public credit, but insiders knew, without Russell, the film may never have made it out of Arizona. 2. Filming was brutal survival, not acting. Making Tombstone wasn't glamorous. It was grueling. Filming in the Arizona desert under punishing heat, wearing heavy wool costumes, and carrying real weapons pushed cast and crew to exhaustion. Days stretched from before sunrise to past midnight. Sam Elliott later admitted it was the hardest shoot of his life. Michael Biehn compared it to boot camp with cameras. The toughness you see on screen wasn't just performance. It was survival. 3. Willem Dafoe almost played Doc Holliday. Before Val Kilmer immortalized the role, Willem Dafoe was a frontrunner. He had the intensity and unpredictability to make Doc unforgettable, but the studio was nervous. Dafoe's controversial past roles, like The Last Temptation of Christ, worried executives about unwanted headlines, so they passed. Looking back, it's hard to imagine anyone else delivering Doc's haunted drawl and razor-sharp wit. Kilmer didn't just play the role. He became the soul of the film. 4. Kurt Russell wasn't the studio's first choice. Russell had to fight hard for Wyatt Earp. The studio wanted bigger, more traditional leading men. They doubted his look, his voice, even his mustache. But Russell pushed back, insisting he could bring a complex, wounded edge to Earp, a man fueled by rage and grief beneath his calm exterior. He won the role not by blending in, but by refusing to play it safe. 5. The script almost died before filming. Screenwriter Kevin Jarre poured months into crafting a script rich with history and emotional weight, but studio after studio rejected it, calling it too long, too serious, and too crowded. Many believed the Western genre was already dead. For a time, Tombstone sat on a shelf, forgotten, but Jarre refused to give up. Eventually, independent backers took the risk the majors wouldn't, and the film was born. Ironically, those same studios later begged to distribute it after it became a success. 6. The ending was completely rewritten. Originally, Tombstone ended with Wyatt Earp walking off alone, with no final farewell to Doc Holliday, no epilogue, and no closure. Test audiences hated it. They said the story felt unfinished. So the studio approved expensive reshoots, adding Doc's hospital goodbye and the snow-dusted epilogue with Josephine. These changes transformed the film's ending from bleak to unforgettable. Without them, Tombstone might have been forgotten. 7. The big gunfight nearly broke the crew. The famous shootout at the OK Corral looks fast and furious on screen, but it took nearly 4 days to film. Live gunfire, explosions timed to split seconds, and dozens of camera setups made it a nightmare. Actors were bruised, props destroyed, and some crew members stopped watching monitors altogether, just covering their ears. The chaos was real, but so was the payoff. The scene remains one of cinema's greatest shootouts. 8. The real town of Tombstone wasn't happy. Not everyone welcomed Hollywood's version of Wyatt Earp's story. Some residents and historians in Tombstone, Arizona, accused the film of dishonoring history. They called it too flashy, too violent, and too inaccurate. A few even tried to block the crew from filming at historic landmarks. Though the production moved forward, the message was clear. For some, Tombstone was more than a movie. It was sacred history. 9. Michael Biehn nearly collapsed during Ringo's duel. The iconic duel between Doc Holliday and Johnny Ringo is tense and silent, but off camera, Michael Biehn was fighting something real. Filming under layers of black wool and blistering heat, he became dangerously dehydrated. By the time cameras rolled, he was dizzy and near collapse. That dazed, unsteady look Ringo gives before the draw wasn't acting. It was exhaustion. The raw edge you see on screen came from pushing his body past its limits. 10. Authentic costumes cause misery. Every button, every boot, every thread was historically accurate, but authenticity came at a cost. Heavy wool coats, high collars, and layered shirts trapped heat in the desert sun. Actors fainted. Sweat soaked through clothing, and some had to change shirts between takes just to hide stains. Val Kilmer later joked that playing a man with tuberculosis while roasting alive was the most method acting he'd ever done. 11. Val Kilmer never broke character. Kilmer didn't just play Doc Holliday. He lived him. From the moment he arrived on set, he stayed in character. His walk, his voice, even his distant attitude during breaks were all part of the transformation. Cast members sometimes didn't know if they were speaking to Val or document. By never stepping out of role, Kilmer created a performance so immersive that it blurred the line between actor and character. 12. Dana Delaney wasn't the studio's first pick. The role of Josephine Marcus, almost one of the more glamorous actresses the studio thought audiences would expect. But Dana Delaney saw Josephine differently, not as a romantic ornament, but as a bold, independent woman who refused to conform. Her quiet strength and confidence won the role, proving Josephine wasn't just Wyatt's love interest. She was his equal. 13. Doc and Ringo's Latin duel was historically accurate. That unforgettable exchange of Latin insults between Doc and Ringo wasn't just clever, it was researched. Val Kilmer worked with historians and Latin experts to make sure the insults were both accurate to language and true to the time period. The result was a scene where words cut sharper than bullets, making it one of the most savage verbal duels in movie history. 14. Sam Elliott nearly quit. Sam Elliott, who played Virgil Earp, was almost lost to the film. As the script went through rewrites, he felt Virgil's depth was being stripped away. He even considered walking. What changed his mind was a private meeting with Kurt Russell. Together, they reshaped Virgil's role, restoring his quiet strength and moral gravity. Without that meeting, Tombstone may have lost its anchor. 15. Kurt Russell cut his own lines to highlight Val Kilmer. As the unofficial director, Russell saw something extraordinary in Kilmer's performance. He made a bold choice. He cut many of his own lines and shifted focus to Doc Holliday. Entire sequences meant for Wyatt Earp were trimmed so Kilmer's arc could shine. Russell wasn't protecting his own spotlight. He was protecting the story. That selfless move made Tombstone unforgettable. 16. Wyatt Earp's real-life showdown was even crazier. That legendary scene where Wyatt walks into gunfire untouched and kills Curly Bill with a single shot? It wasn't invented. It was based on real history. According to accounts, the real Wyatt Earp did just that. Walked calmly into gunfire and scathed and dropped his enemy with one bullet. Sometimes reality is even more cinematic than Hollywood. 17. Val Kilmer studied tuberculosis to shape Doc Holliday. Kilmer went beyond acting. He researched 19th century medical journals to understand tuberculosis. He practiced speaking while holding his breath to simulate shortness of breath, altered his posture to appear weakened, and let exhaustion seep into every move. The pale skin, the coughing fits, the physical decline, it was all deliberate. Kilmer turned illness into art, making Doc Holliday's death feel chillingly real. 18. The score was written in just 4 weeks. Composer Bruce Broughton was brought in at the last minute with no time to prepare. He had just 4 weeks to write and record the entire score. Most films get months. Broughton trusted his instincts, weaving Doc's fragility and Wyatt's rage into haunting themes. Under impossible pressure, he delivered one of the most memorable Western scores of the 1990s. 19. Editing was like surgery. When filming wrapped, the footage was a mess. Scenes were missing, arcs incomplete, and storylines tangled. Editors came and went, some quitting in frustration. One even said, "We weren't cutting a movie, we were stitching one back to life." Through sheer persistence, the story slowly took shape. The final cut wasn't perfect, but it had heart, and that heart saved the film. 20. Tombstone outlasted Kevin Costner's big-budget Wyatt Earp. At the time, Kevin Costner's Wyatt Earp was supposed to be the definitive Western. It had the big budget, the prestige director, and the studio hype. Tombstone, by contrast, was modest, chaotic, and barely held together. But when both films hit theaters, audiences spoke. Costner's version was seen as slow and distant. Tombstone, it was alive, gritty, and endlessly quotable. The underdog won, and it's Tombstone that still lives on today. Bonus fact, Doc Holliday's chilling last words. In the movie, Doc Holliday dies quietly in bed. In real life, it was stranger. Lie in a Colorado hotel room, dying of tuberculosis. Holliday looked at his bare feet, smiled, and whispered, "This is funny." Why? Because he always believed he'd die with his boots on. That gambler's irony was his last bet and his last joke. Tombstone wasn't just a Western. It was a fight for survival, on set and on screen. Against all odds, it became one of the most quoted, most loved, and most enduring Westerns ever made. And it left us with performances that still echo decades later. If you enjoyed this ride through Tombstone's hidden stories, hit that like button, subscribe for more movie deep dives, and tell us in the comments, what's your favorite moment from Tombstone?